Hello, I'm back reviewing the 12 Kingdoms Skies of Dawn. This one, it acts more like a direct sequel to Book 1, where it once again focuses on Yoko, where it takes place roughly a year after the events of Book 1, where she's ascended to the throne and she's to try and rebuild the country, but she's getting a bunch of pushback from the other ministers, who a lot of them are people who used to serve their previous queen, and they don't fully trust her yet because she's only been on a throne for a year or so at this point, and she's still trying to learn about how to run a government and about how the conditions of Kay. And the story also follows two other characters named Soke, who was the previous princess of Ho. Well, her father was the king of Ho for about 30 years, but then he ended up becoming corrupted. Well, he originally wanted to bring in more laws to the country, but they became Hausa and Hausa, where people would be punished for everything, and they ended up rebelling. He ended up being killed, and so did Horan, the queen of Ho. The main guy behind it, Gege, he stripped Soke of her status as princess and sent her to go live in one of the village houses in Ho, which is where orphans and the elderly who don't have anybody to watch over them live together. And then also another character named Susu, who is a Kayaku who has been living in Sai for about 100 years. Where she came in, I think it was supposed to be about the turn of the century, because they mentioned something gas lamps going up and trains and everything being in Japan. So she ended up in the 12 Kingdoms, and she ended up meeting a sage named Lady Ryu, who took her in as one of her servants, got her on the Divine Registry, and now she's able to understand the language and is basically immortal. And so eventually Yoko ends up going down to Kay to learn about everything about Kay. And then Susu and Soke end up hearing that there's a new queen in Kay who's around their age, and both of them go try and meet her for various different reasons, and then the plot kind of unfolds from there. I think the characters are pretty decent. The three main ones we follow are Yoko, Soke, and then Susu. Well, I find it so weird. I don't know if it's the same thing in the Japanese edition, but at least in the English translation, they don't even mention Soke or Susu on the back cover. And they spoil something that happens halfway into the book for some reason. Susu and Soke, their point of view started even before Yoko. But Yoko's the only one who gets mentioned in the description. So that's pretty rude. On the cover, you got Susu and then Soke over here. And this book, I think it's at least kind of longer than the first one. Each of the three young ladies, they all end up Yoko's already in Kay, but Susu and Soke end up going to Kay after, I said, hearing that Yoko's on the throne. And so the whole thing with Yoko is that nobody believes she's able to be a good queen. So many people are kind of plotting against her, or doing a whole bunch of stuff behind her back, and then she doesn't know about it, and so she ends up becoming so frustrated because everyone is telling her like 5 different things at once, and like no matter what she does, somebody is very like angry at her about it, and so she ends up like at the beginning of the book, she ends up doing like this whole move of like moving ministers around, and then she tells Keiki, "Tell them I'm going to go to N to study with I think it's specifically like Kenneth and but she's actually gonna be in K studying with a man named Anho, who Keiki knows, so that she can actually like learn about K while like living among the people, and basically seeing like the conditions for herself instead of having like other people tell her about it. And then Soge, like I said, she was the princess of Ho, and for like 30 years she lived in the palace. Like I think she vaguely knew what her father was doing throughout the 30-year reign, but she never did anything to stop him. She just spent the whole time in the castle. Like in the anime they have her like singing and dancing, and she never got involved in politics, but she has like a decent idea of what they're about. And so when they ended up stripping her of her title as princess and go to live down below, she doesn't believe like any of it is her fault. Like, where she kept saying she had no idea what was really going on. Like her parents just kept telling her like don't get involved, and also like how she has it worse than everyone else. Well, everyone's trying to tell her that like she sort of known what was going on and try to do more because she was the princess and she did have some duty to the people and to the country to try and get more involved. And then we also have Susu, who was she sort of in the same idea of thinking as like Soke, where she believes that she has it worse than other people because like Lady Rio is not the best person to try and work for, because all she does is like force her servants to do stuff for her. She'll like wake them up in like the middle of the night to like clean and like make impossible demands. And Susu is, if it wasn't for like the being on the Defiant Registry, she would never be able to understand the language. Like in the first book, the one guy Yoko meets, he I think he mentioned that the language is pretty difficult, and she kind of has like this very like idealized image of the Yoko, because she hears that Yoko was kind of like the same border, so like she came over from Japan, and so she automatically think that Yoko is gonna be like the same, like that she misses Japan and everything. But as far as I can tell, Yoko, I mean, she kind of seems to maybe miss it, but she also seems to be pretty, I don't know, like resigned the best word, but she's willing to like stay in Japan, to stay in K and be queen. So like she makes comparisons between the two worlds, but she never like talks about missing it that much. Like she seems pretty fine with not being in Japan anymore, like she was in the first book. And so I think like Yoko's probably my favorite so far because like she does kind of seem more self-aware for the most part than the other two. Like she understands that she doesn't know what's going on, and like she does sort of like blame some of the people for not specifically like telling stuff to her face, but also like she understands that she has to make some sort of change, so she decides to actually like go down and learn. Like she seems to understand that she at least has like flaws, it seems like, where she knows that she can't keep trying to please everyone, but she doesn't know what else to do. Whereas like Soke and Susu, they seem to take a lot longer to try and change compared to Yoko. Like like, I think Yoko is much more of like a steady change. Like, she's already like, I mean, she's mostly like the same. Like, she does change, but like the change for Susu and Soke is a lot more like extreme. Well, you could kind of like say that Yoko's getting much more willing to like, I don't know, like displease people and take more like authority, but in like a good way. It would seem like Soke and Susu, they do get into a lot more argument with people about like their past and their own flaws, and it actually takes like a lot, like I said, a lot longer for the stuff people are saying to them to really like stick. Like I said with Soke, she doesn't think she had any responsibility to try and like do anything. Especially when her father started getting like way worse with his laws and they started becoming a lot harsher. She never really like stood up for herself, but then also at the same time she was complaining that everybody was mean to her. But she never like talked back to them in order to try and like get them to back off her. Like in the beginning, where Lady Ryu, she's leaving and she gives them a bunch of demands to try and do while she's away, and they had to be completed by the time she came back, and all the servants started like attacking her, saying it was all her fault, like her fault, but instead of saying, like speaking up for herself and saying, like, it's not my fault, the Lady Ryu told us this, she just runs off and says that they're all like mean to her. I mean, at least with Suzu, I kind of get a feel. Like I said, she doesn't understand the language of the 12 Kingdoms. And she's so afraid that if she does anything against Lady Ryu, then she's not going to be able to stay on the Divine Registry. Because, like, everyone else, like I said, can speak the language. Like, I think the writing they use is pretty similar to, like, Chinese characters. Like, I think a lot of them they use what got like brought over by people from like China, I think it was. You know, and like both of them, they really needed like help from other people to kind of like help them see what's really going on. Because at one point, roughly halfway into the book, like a third of the way halfway into the book, roughly, Soke ends up meeting with Rakusun, where Anki ends up asking Rakusun, who's on like winter break from a school, because like one of the reasons why he ended up helping Yoko in the first book to get to Anne was because he wanted to go to like school there, because like Hansu aren't allowed to go to like the school in Ko, so he went to Anne, and so Anki ends up asking him to go to Ryu, which is one of the countries. Yeah, I think it's like right above Anne. Yeah, it's like right above Anne there. And so he asks him to go there because they started seeing demons along the coast of Ryu and Anne that weren't there before, and weren't the demons who were coming in from Tai, because Tai's still without a king. And so he goes there to investigate what's going on. Soge, she was in the village house for a while, but then people like accidentally found out that she was the princess of Ho, because like no one knew what happened to her, and she was saved by Gaikei's man, sent to Kyu. What is the one right here? And so she ended up as like a maidservant to the queen there, but not put on the Divine Registry. And so, but then after like a week or something, she ended up stealing a bunch of her jewelry, ran away, and ran to Ryu, where she ended up staying at one of the inns that just happened to have Rakusun there. She ends up getting like arrested because the queen had sent like notice that she ran away with a bunch of her stolen jewelry, and she blamed Rakusun, but because she had like a pass from the queen of Anne, not specifically think from Anki, he wasn't solid with anything. And so he ends up traveling with her for a while. And he's actually like pretty patient with her, even though she tried to get him arrested. Like, he's not that. I mean, he was mad, but he wasn't like that angry after a while. And he actually starts to like explain to her like what she should have been doing in the country. And then Susu meets a young boy named Seisu, who was originally from K, came to, I think it was Ko, and then when Ko started to fall, I think they went to Sai, I think it was, and now he's going back to K. And so he ends up trying to like explain to her like there are people who are worse off than her in the world because like once she's immortal, she can't die from diseases. She's never going to get like die from like this from like any normal means. She can understand like any language now, and meanwhile there are people in like K and Ko and Tai who lost all of their homes. They're being attacked by demons. Like he lost his home in K and in Ko, and then both his parents died, and he doesn't have any family that he's aware of. Like the two of them can be a lot. Well, like Soge is pretty rude and entitled, and she doesn't really care about doing any sort of like child labor. Like never like terrible labor. Like she was complaining about like cleaning jewelry and stuff, and then Susu, she cries at almost everything. Like she just be having, like she'd be talking to Sisu. He starts like, he tries to explain to her that about stuff that's going on, and she gets offended and starts crying. And she also kind of like idolizes the Queen of K. Like I said, like she automatically assumes that Shoko must feel the same way about her, and then they're instantly gonna get along because they're both from Japan, without really like realizing like the differences. Cause like when Susu and she ends up leaving Lady Ryu, and then she ends up going to the castle inside where the queen lives, and she's trying to talk with like Siren, like Queen of Sai, and she's like saying like, well, like, what makes you think that the Queen of K misses Japan? Like, what makes you think that just because both of you are from Japan that you're like the same? And she also is like pretty quick to like turn on the queen when she thinks that she might be a part of like what's going on in K. Like it's like very like quick and sudden. It was kind of like weird. And so like I think some of the other characters are actually like pretty good. Like you got some of the people who end up being in like the village house Shoko's staying in, like Rankyoku, who's a teenage girl about the same age as Yoko, like 15, 16. Like she's like a pretty sweet young lady. Like she's always helping around the house. She takes care of her younger brother Keike because they don't have any parents. And like once Shoko comes to the house, she's like pretty friendly to her and starts like explaining things to her about how some of the stuff works. And then you also got Anho. And so he ends up being somewhat of like a mystery where, because usually like the person who's the head of the village house also comes from like the same town, but Rankyoku says that Anho is not even from the same village. Like I don't think anybody even knows where he's from, and he somehow became like the head of it. And then he keeps having like all of these visitors coming around. You got one guy coming around who like always covers his face. And then later on, like, the back of the book spoils what happened to him, where he ends up getting kidnapped for some reason. And like, no one knows why this old man was taken because he's like 70 or so. And then ends up being revealed that he's a sage from the time of King Tatsu. From, I think it's like over 100 years ago or so, where he was like this famous, I think it was a minister, but then he ended up like leaving, and like no one knows like what happened to him or if he really like existed, because I think it was like there was not that many records about him, but people like knew his name. And so he's basically like a wise old man who is connected to like these specific schools that like, I think they kind of teach like philosophy and try and teach people like how things should be going in the kingdom, like the way, which is like the guidelines that God gave to the kings in order to like run their kingdom. And then we also like start getting like about halfway into the book, we get like two brothers named Sake and Koso. Well, they start playing a bigger part in the later book, later in the book, and they become like kind of friends with Susu. Well, they were trying to mount a rebellion against a man named Soko, who is like the governor of where they live. Where he's like one of the governors left over from the previous queen who bribed his way into the position. He's doing everything he can to like abuse his power. And then you also got Kantai, who is also leading a rebellion, not against Soko, but against Gaho, who's like the governor, I think it's of the entire province that has Soko in it. And he becomes connected to Soke, and he ends up like helping to like save her when she tries to stop an execution happening, which is something that like shouldn't be happening in K. And then you also, and we actually like Keiki shows up a bit more in this than he did in book 1, and he kind of appeared in book 2, but he shows up a lot more in this one, where he's doing everything he can to try and help Yoko. Like, he's kind of better at talking with her, but he also knows that there are times where Yoko's become so frustrated that it's like she won't listen to really like anyone, like especially in the beginning. Because it's like everybody's telling her multiple different things, like even when Keiki tried to like explain some stuff to her, she wouldn't listen. Like one of the things was when they were talking about a man named Kokan, who was the lord of Baku province, who was the only lord who knew that Zoe wasn't the real queen and was the one who went against her, while everybody else like joined her. And people were like trying to get him off from being a lord, because it was like they were saying because he's so well liked that they felt like threatened by him and wanted to try and like stop him from being like lord. Because I think it was something like if they see how great he is at his job and how skilled he is, then people might start like, I think it was like flocking to him and like supporting him. And it was just to be revealed that like even Keiki had no idea what was happening in K. She starts telling him about how they still do like executions in K, that the taxes in a lot of the provinces are actually like much higher than they should be. So it starts to go and show that like even like Keiki had no idea what was going on in the country and like nobody was telling him. I wish I did like the fact that they interacted more in this one, because they had like 5 minutes in the first book talking. Like he shows up, tells her we gotta go, and then gives her like one demon, and then he disappears for like 500 pages, and then he shows back up at the end. And we also got Seisu, who's the young boy that travels with Susu. Like, I don't think they ever gave his age. Like, I'm assuming he's maybe like 10. But even as like a 10-year-old, he's like extremely like wise and intelligent. Like, he keeps giving Susu like sage advice about the world and about how she's acting. and he's like 10. And ends up kind of like helping Suzu see things in like a slightly different light. Like, I think Suzu sees sort of starts to change around him, I think a little bit quicker than Selke. And he starts saying he felt bad about Lady Ryu, because like it never fully goes into Lady Ryu in the anime, I don't think. Like, they sort of explain her, but in the book, it's that it seems like she's angry because people like forgot about her, even though she was like very, very important in the last reigning king. Where she was like the only one that the king would even listen to. She was like the only one keeping him in check. She was doing all of these important things. Like, she was like officially like a minister, but she was like a woman like really close with the king. I think she was like his mistress or something. And like, even when he was kind of like straying from the path, she was like the only one able to kind of like push him away from it, and before he got like way worse and everybody else felt threatened by her, like sent her away, and like her leaving but kind of like caused this king to stray so so far from the path that I think it was he had to give up the throne to save, I think it was Siren, I think it was. And I think it's even stated in the book that like she lives on one of the, I think it was one of the mountains, and yeah, Blue Mist Airy. And she'd been living there for a while now, but I think it was like nobody even remembers her name or like any of the stuff she did, so. And she's actually like kind of angry about that. I think it's the like the implication is there's like so few people that's just I mean, she's still like a pretty like terrible person, like, so the book kind of goes into further explanation as to why she might be acting the way she does without like fully saying like that the stuff she's doing is like a good thing. And also, like, Rakusun, like I said, he makes a pretty, like, decent-sized appearance, so he kind of shows up for, like, maybe half the book, and it kind of, like, goes off towards, like, the later middle half, when I think he goes back to Anne. Like I said, he goes to Ryu because Anki asked him to, and he was saying that they want to be prepared if anything happens, if Ryu starts to go on like a downward spiral. And like I said, he ends up meeting Soken in one of the inns, and they actually start to like travel together. And kind of like with Seisu, he starts to provide advice, and he even like kind of jokes that he always ends up finding people who need help, because it's the same thing with happened with Yoko, where he ends up meeting her and she needed help, and he was there for her. I actually like Rakusun as a character. It's like, as I said, even though like Soge's like pretty mean to him, she's pretty rude, she tried to get him arrested, but he doesn't seem like really, really angry at her. Like, he understands why she's acting the way she does. He actually is like pretty patient and like understanding with her compared to the other characters who meet her, especially in the beginning. And he starts to show off more of his intelligence, where he starts to explain a lot about other countries and their histories, not just from Ko. And he actually seems, I mean, like, he's given similar advice to Soge that the other characters try to give her in the beginning, like the Queen of Kyo, and then Gobo, who's like who's the leader of the village house, and then Gaikei. But I think he was the one who really kind of like got her to start changing. I think because he's way more patient and nice to her than the other characters. Like, he never really raises his voice or like really insults her that much, and or really like anything like that. He's critical, but he's never like terrible to her. Cause at one point, it was after they meet, he gave her money. He was like, "Oh, you can have this money, leave, or you can maybe like stay with me, and kind of like travel with me for a while." So he like gave her a choice, which like similar to the choice that Lady Kyo gave her, but he's like a lot nicer about it, in a way. Like I said, the Queen of Kyo, she did try to teach her stuff about like hard work, and that she's only like trying to like belittle the people who work in the castle or work on farms and stuff. And like she's right, but she was also pretty tough about it, and she was also pretty like blunt. So it kind of seems like the patience that Rocket soon gave her is sort of like what helped her get better rather than like the other characters. And I think the only other one of the only other characters with some importance is the Queen of Sai. Maybe Gaikai and like Gobo. Well, the Queen of Sai ends up helping Susu when she leaves the Blue Mystery, where she ends up trying to give Susu advice. And she actually seems like a pretty good queen. Like, I think she's the only ruler we've had who's a lot older. Like, I think she's in like her 60s or 70s compared to a lot of them who are like 30s or 40s. Like, I think Yoko is like the youngest queen among the rulers we've had so far, because she's like 16. Well, I think the Queen of Kyu, I think the Queen of Kyu is probably a little bit older than Yoko when she became queen. And then Gaikai was the one behind the rebellion in Ho. And he was like the first one to try and help Soke see what's wrong with her behavior and like what's really going on. And you had Gobo, who like I said was the leader of the village house Soke stayed at. And he blames Soke for everything that's happened in Ho and for not doing her duties as princess. And she was the one who accidentally revealed that she was the princess, where at one point she was like yelling at Soke about like not doing her work correctly at the village house, and one of the other young girls who was staying there overheard this and alerted everybody in town. Where it was like her son was killed trying to stop the execution of someone else, and so Gobo blames Soke for not doing more and start taking her anger out on her, even though she was supposed to be taking care of her. Because I mean, like, I don't really blame her, like, with everything that happened in Ho with the king and how terrible it was. I don't blame that many of the characters for being mad at Soke. And so a lot of the other characters are like pretty minor, like the people who work for Yoko in the court, like, except for Seikyo, who was the High Mandarin, who kind of like, I think was supposed to oversee everybody and like oversee all of the other positions in the court. None of them even had names. He was the only one who even has a name, and he really got any development because he was the one behind like everything happening in K with like Gaho and Soko and trying to keep them in power and kind of like undermining Yoko's authority as queen. And so like none of the other ministers or like anybody in Yoko's court except for him and like Keiki get like any personality. Like we meet one of the generals who works for the royal army. We get his name and kind of like a bit with him, but that's about it. Like we're told that they argue with Yoko a lot, but it happens kind of like off page and we're like told about it, but we never like really like see them like bust into her office and like try and like argue with her about stuff going on. Because like we're told that they argue a lot about what to do with Kolkan, or how she handles things like the building, like rebuilding bridges, or like dealing with like the food shortages. Like we never see them talk with anything. Like she spends maybe like 30 pages with a code before she disappears. And like Kokon, he appears for like basically 2 lines in person, and then everything else people just like talk about him, but he never really shows up. So everybody mentions like how great of a governor he is and everything. We do meet this man like Kantai. I think I mentioned he used to work for Kokon, and he talks about how great of a governor he was. So I think the plot of this is like pretty straightforward, for the most part. Like, Soge, she ends up hearing about the Queen of K, and so she wants to go to K to try and like destroy her, like get her off her throne, because she's jealous of her for being her age and having everything that Soge thinks she deserves. And then Susu, she's going to meet the Queen of K because she feels like lonely, and she thinks that they'll be able to like get along and like be friends. While Yoko goes down to learn more about K. And then all 3 of them get caught in like the rebellion, where Soge ends up with the people who serve Kokon and are going after Gaho, while Susu ends up with the people going after Soko. And it's so weird that like neither group even know about each other. Like, they've presumably been working for like a while because they seem pretty organized, but like none of them heard any whispers of each other doing anything. Like, the group going after Gaho, they had like very specific weapons that could kill like people on the Defiant Registry and then sell them to the people who are going after Soko. Meanwhile, Yoko, she starts becoming suspicious of like the people who are coming to Enho's house, and she ends up seeing Koso leave a house she saw one of the guys go to who came to see Enho, and then like they disappear, and so she becomes even more suspicious, so she tries to like investigate more, especially after the village house was attacked in Rankyoku. She ended up being killed, and that Enho ended up being taken, and like Rankyo's death is actually pretty sad. Like, she ends up finding out that Yoko was the queen when she finds like the royal seal, and she ends up trying to like protect her. Well, like the guys coming in never realized that Yoko was down there. Like, they never saw the seal, and so it's like the 3. Soke, Susu, and Yoko don't like really meet up until like over halfway into the book. Like, Yoko helps Soke escape when the guards are chasing after her when she tries to stop that one execution. Then they leave, and Yoko ends up meeting Susu when she goes to one of the towns, and Seisu ends up being killed by Soko, and that's when Susu comes back, and his death is what really like motivates her to join the rebellion, because they were actually going to meet Yoko to see if she can try and heal him, because he ended up becoming really sick. It's never like, it doesn't say like what was wrong, but he ended up becoming really sick on the journey, and he ended up stumbling in the path of Soko's carriage, and he ended up being killed. And like the Soke and Suzu don't even get into K until like roughly halfway into the book. And like, I think the first part of the book is pretty like heavy on info. Like, Enho and Rakashun spend like a lot of time explaining stuff to people. Well, like, I think the later half kind of like tones it down a bit with information. Like, Enho goes a lot into about how like villages are set up, like the taxes, how the names are, like how people are like named, and how other places are like run. I mean, it kind of made sense. Like, Soke and Susu, they had to travel all the way to K to get there. Like, they were in like different countries, and so they had to take their time traveling. It wouldn't have made sense if they just like poofed there in K now for like 2 chapters. And so it's also with like Soke. It was kind of like with her. So I just kind of started to see what would happen to like Ho after her father died because she starts to see real and that's like tilting and how difficult it was gonna be for the people there and all the struggles that they were like already kind of facing. And then so this ended up seeing Anne and how that place was like flourishing. About how like a good king can do all of this stuff. So like when she arrives in K, she starts becoming more sympathetic to how the people are living. Yeah, and so like I don't know the specific time frame of the book, but it's like almost as soon as the rebellion starts, the rest of the book doesn't seem to take that long. Like it's almost like once everybody starts doing that, it takes like 2 weeks or something. Like once they start getting with the groups, it really starts to get going. Like I said, it would have been kind of nice if they had more talk of like these groups beforehand. Because, like, they don't say that much, so it's kind of like a mystery of what these people are doing. Because, like I said, they seem to have been around for a while because, like, Koso's group, each of them have, like, a silver ring in one hand. And they have, like, a specific thing they say to other people so that they know that they're part of the same group and able to do stuff. Whereas, like, Kantai's group, like, it makes sense that they're already pretty organized because a lot of them were like former soldiers working for Kolkan, and I think they've been planning this for like a lot longer than like Kosu's group. I don't know. And also like Kanta's group, they had like when they came to save the rebels from one of the final battles, they had like I think it was like 3,000 or 4,000 men coming to help. Yeah, it's like 5,000 men coming to help them out. Like compared to Koso's group, who only had like I think it was a couple hundred. But I don't think they would have been together for too long because nobody seemed to know that they were doing anything. Because like there was no one in the code saying that there was any sort of like rebellion going on or people were doing this stuff. So they must have been around long enough to become this organized, but not so long that nobody knew what was going on. And so sometimes it seems like the battles towards the rebellion aren't a huge focus. Like at one point, Ilgo's going to capture one castle as almost like I think it's supposed to be like a diversion. And it like starts towards like the end of the battle. And so like there are a couple like good fight scenes, like Yoko, she has one of Keiki's demons with her, and so she has him like helping out of like attacking men in other areas of the castle to give like the rebels a better advantage. I think she still has the one demon inside of her. I can't remember his name. Joyu, who was the Hinman. I think she mentioned him like once in this book. But that's about it. Like, it's never mentioned if he's still... Like, I don't think it's ever mentioned if he's still living inside of her. Or if he's still, like, controlling her body. Because that's what he did in, like, book 1. He, like, helped her fight. I think that's what the Hinmen are for. Like, they like, able to, like, take control of people's bodies and, like, help them fight. But I think he never gets mentioned in this. I don't think. Like, he never talks to Yoko or anything. Like, in her mind. Because she's, like, the only one who can hear him, I think. And so, like, the later part of the book, once the rebellion starts, is when we kind of get a bunch of fight scenes. Where they're fighting the people at the castle. Like, the royal army comes. They're fighting, like, the cavalry. Like Susu bought like a demon steed that she's using to like help carry people, like and then the demon steed is like able to like jump super high, so she's able to like get people like over like the castle walls. And then like as it goes on, they start the conspiracy starts to kind of like take more of a form, where you start to realize that there has to be somebody in the castle who is helping Gaho and Shoko stay in power, and that there's more people like working against Yoko because there's multiple times where like she'll try and get them to do stuff, but they just like dig their heels in. Like she tries to get like Soko like stripped of his title, but they're like, no, there's no evidence, even though there's like a whole bunch of evidence against him. And like at one point she tried to get the royal army to help out, but they're like, no, we're not doing that. And then they come anyway, even though she never gave like the orders to. Like she never like received them from like Keiki, one of his demons. And like the same thing with like Gaho, like people had evidence against him, but people were like, oh, we can't really prove that much of it. And also how like Kokan actually like wanted the throne for himself, even though that wasn't true. Like they just made up a whole bunch of evidence against him. And so we, like I said, we also start to see that like several of the provinces had like a huge tax on them. Like I think it was 7 parts of 10. So like 7 parts of their income would go to like the lords, even though it was supposed to be like 1 or 2 or something like that. I think the world building was like pretty good. Like I think it was like way more intense than the other ones. Like there was a lot more pages devoted to like characters talking about how things are set up. Like I said, how like the names work, because like people have like family names, then they have like childhood names and like given names and all this other stuff, and how like the towns are set up, like how they do like the layout and everything, and also like get the introduction of like the village houses and sort of like how laws might go through, and like all of this other stuff. Like it did make sense with this one because Zoko had to spend so much time trying to study what's going on in order to try and like run a kingdom effectively. And then it was also like Rakusun and had to like help explain to Soke what's going on, and we do get information about like Sai and Ho, but not a lot. But we get this like more of them to kind of see how like the other countries are doing, because mostly the countries that get brought up a lot are K, Ko a bit, and then like N, and a bit with Tai, so we don't see a bunch of the other ones. So I kind of like this one because they go to like multiple different places. Like Soke goes from Ho to Q, and then Rio through N, and then goes through N for a bit, and then to K. Meanwhile, like Susu, she was in like a one mountain inside, and then she goes to like the royal palace, and then she goes on a boat to go to K, and then Yoko travels a lot through K to learn about stuff. Like I think it was a lot, but I didn't mind it because, like I said, it made sense. And we also get like some smaller details like Ho, because it's like way more up north. It gets way more like snow and cold weather during the winter months. Or like K, because it's like it's almost seems like it's like right on the crater of this or something like that. So it's like pretty like moderate throughout the whole year. So like Anho says that like people can sleep out during winter, and like not freeze to death. Like it's probably like, I don't know, like 40 degrees or something, or like 50 during winter, and like so it doesn't seem like they probably get that lot of snow either. So I kind of like having more of the world fleshed out if we don't spend too much time. Because I mean, I kind of like what we got, but also like it's kind of how I felt about like the Witch Kingdom and like Black Clover. Like we could go to some of these interesting places and then lunch, and then sort of learn stuff, or you don't really go there again. This one, I think, like I said, was like pretty good. Like, I do like how everything is set up. Like I think the pacing's pretty good too. Like there's not too many moments that were bad. Like, I kind of wish that, like, the later parts with, like, the rebellion would have started, like, a little bit sooner. Because I kind of feel like that just started and then, like, ended. Okay, I think that's everything. Peace.